Hi there, traveler. Welcome to my channel, a place where gentle stories, soft rain sounds, and tender voices help you unwind and fall gently into sleep. Tonight's story is called The Tarot Card Under the Tray. It's a quiet journey about a woman, maybe someone like you, who found a forgotten card, and along with it, a forgotten part of herself. So, if you're ready, get comfortable, dear. Let the rain settle in the background. Let the past quietly whisper, and let this story carry you where dreams begin. Part 1. The Rainy Shift. It was one of those nights, the kind that curled around your shoulders like an old coat. The rain had started just after sunset, tapping on the bar windows like a polite stranger asking to be let in. I didn't mind. I never do. Rain makes things feel softer, less urgent. The bar had its usual glow amber lights dimmed just enough. The low hum of jazz weaving through the clinking of glasses and murmured conversations. I'd always thought of this place as more of a sanctuary than a business. No neon sign outside, no fancy menu, just stories, soft hands around warm glasses, and the kind of quiet that makes you breathe slower without realizing it. I was drying a wine glass when the door chimed that old bell above the frame with its slightly out-of-tune ring. Margaret came in, umbrella dripping, red scarf wound tight around her neck like it was holding her together. She gave me a nod and headed to her usual stool, second from the left, the one with the little crack in the cushion. Same as always? I asked, already reaching for the peppermint tea. She smiled. You always remember. I always did. Not because I had to, but because this place, this routine, these people, they were all I had. And somehow, knowing someone's drink felt like knowing a piece of them. A couple sat in the corner booth, whispering between giggles, their hands playing a secret game under the table. Ben, our quiet regular with the Hemingway beard, was nursing his scotch and writing in that leather-bound journal he never let anyone see. The bar breathed with life, but in a hush, like everyone had agreed not to speak above a certain volume. I liked it that way. Predictable, comfortable, safe. And then I saw it. It was after Margaret left, the bar had thinned out, the music drifting into something slower, almost sleepy. I was clearing the trays from the back corner table when I noticed something stuck underneath one of them. A flash of color. Gold, maybe. Or something warmer. I pulled it out, expecting a receipt, maybe a scribbled napkin note. But it was a card. A tarot card. Strength. I turned it over, blank on the back. No markings, no logo. Not one of ours. We kept a deck behind the bar for fun, mostly for curious tourists or bored locals. But this card, it was different. Older, maybe? Heavier. The artwork showed a woman gently taming a lion, not with a rope or chains, but with a hand resting lightly on its mane. Her face was calm, kind, familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I stared at it for longer than I probably should have. The bar faded out a little. My fingers tingled, not from fear, but from something else. Recognition? Memory? It had been a long time since I believed in signs. Longer still since I believed in magic, fate, or any of the glittery lies we tell ourselves to make sense of disappointment. But holding that card, something stirred. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. I slipped the card into my apron pocket. Not sure why. Not sure what I thought would happen. But a part of me, a small, half-drunk part buried deep under years of silence, whispered, "Pay attention." And so I did. Part 2. A year without fire. It's strange, isn't it? How a whole year can blur into just a few moments. And how those moments somehow carry all the weight. Last year feels like a story someone else told me. Or maybe a dream I never wanted to remember. I was living in the city back then. Still married. Still painting. Still pretending. The divorce papers came on a Thursday. I remember that clearly. It had rained that day too, but a colder kind of rain. The kind that bites. We hadn't been happy in a long time. But the silence between us had become so normal. It almost felt like comfort. Almost. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He just slid the envelope across the counter like he was handing me a receipt for something I already knew I'd bought. And in a way, I'd spent years buying into the idea that if I was quiet enough, soft enough, accommodating enough, I could keep everything from breaking. I could keep the fire alive. But fires die when you stop feeding them. My art? Gone. I stopped painting the year before that. Said I was too busy. Too tired. Truth was, I didn't know what I wanted to say anymore. It's hard to speak when you don't recognize your own voice. I packed up what little I had left of myself and moved back to my hometown. The one with wide sidewalks and sleepy porches and the kind of air that smells like pine in the mornings. I moved into my grandmother's old cottage on Wisteria Lane, tiny kitchen, creaky stairs, wild roses in the yard. The kind of house that feels like it's sighing all the time. And for a while, I disappeared. Not to the world, just to myself. I'd wake up late, drink lukewarm coffee on the porch, watch the mail truck go by like it had secrets I'd never be allowed to know. I'd read old books and avoid mirrors. I became very good at pretending I was okay. But inside, the fire was gone. I don't know when it went out. I just remember the day I realized I wasn't warm anymore. People say strength is loud, bold, shiny. but sometimes it's just surviving. Sometimes it's whispering, "I'm still here, even when no one's listening." I found the bar by accident. Or maybe it found me. A help wanted sign in the window, a smell of cinnamon and wood smoke. And little by little, I started to come back. I learned names. I poured drinks. I smiled again, the kind that reached my eyes. But it wasn't until I found that tarot card that something moved. Something old. Something buried. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered what it would feel like to be strong. Part 3. The Bar with No Name. There's something strange about working in a bar with no name. Almost like it lets people leave their stories at the door. No labels. No assumptions. Just the low hum of lives passing each other in the dark. It sits tucked between a laundromat and a second-hand bookstore, neither of which ever seem to have customers, and yet somehow always stay open. The bar has no sign, no flashing lights or clever branding. Just a wooden door with chipped paint and a single brass handle that squeaks every time it turns. Inside, it smells like rain-damp wood and citrus peel. There's jazz on vinyl, always a little fuzzy around the edges. The bar counter is old walnut, smoothed down by decades of elbows and spilled secrets. The lighting is warm amber and gold, like being inside a memory. I started working there not long after I came back to town. It was supposed to be temporary. Just something to do while I figured myself out. Funny how life has a way of letting temporary things wrap around you like roots. The owner, Max, is a man of few words. 60-something, white beard, always wears a navy vest, and never drinks anything stronger than chamomile tea. When I applied, he didn't ask about my resume. Just looked at me for a moment, then said, "You look like someone who listens." And that was that. The regulars, well, they're a chapter all their own. There's Nora, who wears silk scarves in her hair and reads tarot for strangers. Henry, a retired carpenter who drinks whiskey and hums to himself when no one's watching. Lisa and Paul, a couple who argue about literature like it's foreplay. And others' faces I see more often than my own reflection. Most of them don't know my full story. I like it that way. In a place with no name, you get to choose who you are. Sometimes, when the bar is slow and the rain is tapping the windows just right, I like to think of it as a little pocket universe. A place outside of time where hearts mend quietly and glasses are refilled without needing to ask. People tell me things, not in dramatic, soul-bearing confessions, but in the small ways. a sigh after the second drink, a soft smile when a favorite song comes on, a question asked more for comfort than curiosity. It's in those spaces that I started to feel again. Not in big, sweeping ways, but like an ember rekindling. Slow, gentle, quiet. And then there was that night. The tray. The card. The strength card tucked just under the coaster, like it had been waiting for me. I didn't tell anyone about it. Just slipped it into my apron pocket and felt its weight against my side all night. Strength. A woman holding the jaws of a lion. Calm. Composed. In control. Things I hadn't felt in a long, long time. But maybe this place had been working its magic on me longer than I realized. Or maybe I was just finally ready to hear it. Ready to remember the version of myself who once believed in things, in art, in love, in fire. That night, I went home with the strength card in my hand. And for the first time in what felt like a year, I slept without dreaming of the things I'd lost. Just the sound of jazz and the memory of warm light on old wood. And a quiet, unfamiliar thought blooming somewhere in the back of my mind. Maybe I'm not lost. Maybe I've just been hiding. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to come out again. Part 4. The card that stared back. It was still there the next night. The strength card. Tucked exactly where I left it on the edge of the back counter, under the dusty old tray I never used. I told myself I imagined it a fluke, maybe a remnant from someone else's forgotten reading, but no. It sat there like it belonged, upright and oddly luminous, its edges crisp and clean like it had just been printed. Not a smudge. No one had touched it. At least, no one admitted to it. It wasn't from the bar's tarot set. Ours was vintage, worn, a little bent from years of being passed between curious fingers and inebriated hopes. This one looked new. Sterile. Like it had been meant for me, and only me. I picked it up again carefully, like it might burn. The figure on the card, the woman taming the lion, stared back at me with soft, endless patience. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't fighting. Just being. And somehow, she reminded me of someone I hadn't seen in a very long time. Me. I turned the card over. No writing. No sign of a manufacturer. No signature. Not even a mark. Just a pale cream back, blank as fresh snow. It shouldn't have unnerved me the way it did. but I couldn't shake the feeling it had been left, purposefully. "You ever seen this deck before?" I asked Jules later that night, when the bar had emptied out and only the hum of the cooler and the echo of distant jazz remained. He looked up from polishing glasses. "Strength. Huh." He took the card, flipped it once, then again. "Nope, ours has that coffee stain across the chariot. This one's way too clean." He handed it back like it had static on it. I slid it into my apron pocket. I didn't ask anyone else. I didn't want to explain why it made my fingers tremble. Why it kept me awake later that night, tracing the silhouette of the lion and the woman in my mind. It wasn't just a card. It was a message. You know that feeling, don't you, dear? When something small, a word, a song, a scent cracks your chest just enough to let light in? That's what this was. I didn't know yet what it meant, but I knew it had something to do with who I used to be. And that woman was buried under too many layers of doubt and dust to reach without help. Maybe this card, this strange, silent strength, was her way back. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid in bed with the card on the nightstand, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling. Wondering, was someone playing a game with me? Or had the universe finally whispered back? The next morning, I slipped the card into my journal. Not to forget it, but to keep it close. Like a matchstick tucked inside an old coat pocket, waiting for the right moment to strike. Part 5. The Man with the Quiet Eyes. It was a memory soft around the edges, like an old Polaroid. One that hadn't surfaced in a while, but rose now with gentle insistence. He'd come in months ago, late, just before closing. I remember because his eyes were the kind that didn't ask for anything but still seemed to search. Quiet eyes. Like they held a question they were too polite to voice. He ordered an herbal tea. Not the whiskey. Not the seasonal spiked cider. Tea. That alone made me notice him. No one came to our bar for tea. "Do you believe," he asked, tracing the rim of the mug, "that some places choose us before we choose them?" I remember blinking at him. "That's poetic," I said. He smiled, not wide, not showy. Just the soft kind that warms slowly, like the sun coming through curtains. I think this place wanted me to sit here tonight. I laughed nervously. People said strange things to bartenders, especially late. But he wasn't drunk. Wasn't even tired. Just calm. "You believe in fate?" I asked, half playing along. He looked up. "Don't you?" I remember not answering right away. Instead, I wiped the counter even though it was already clean. The question hit a little too close to a place inside me I hadn't dusted off in a while. "What about art?" he continued. "Did you used to paint?" That startled me. I hadn't talked about painting in, God, maybe a year? Maybe more. "How do you know that?" I asked, maybe too sharply. He raised his hands, palms out. "I don't, just a feeling." And then he left. No phone number, no name. Just a folded napkin under the teacup with a sketch of a tiny lion in pencil, curled asleep beneath a tree. I kept it. Of course I did. It lives in the drawer behind the register, tucked beneath old receipts and matchbooks and other bits of memory I can't seem to throw away. Back then, I thought he was just another traveler passing through. One of those who wandered in on rainy nights and left without a sound. But now that the strength card has found me, I wonder, was that his card? Was he trying to tell me something? Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it's all just coincidence wrapped in moonlight and nostalgia. But when I close my eyes, I can still see his quiet eyes watching me, kindly. Like he knew I'd forgotten something important. Like he was waiting for me to remember. And maybe, just maybe, it's time I started listening. Part 6. Her Mother's Tarot. When I was little, my mother only took her tarot deck out when the house was quiet. Always after twilight. Always after she made tea. She said it was for healing. Not fortune-telling. Not party tricks. Just healing. I'd sit by the kitchen table, legs swinging from the chair too big for me, and watch her shuffle. Slow. Reverent. The deck was worn soft at the edges. Faded. The kind of wear that only love can make. She told stories as she turned the cards. Each one a lesson. Each one a doorway. But she only let me hold one. The Strength card. "It's yours," she said, brushing my hair behind my ear. "You'll need it more than most." Back then, I thought she meant I'd grow up to be a lion tamer. Or a superhero. But now, sitting behind the bar, fingertips resting on this new card I didn't pull. This strength, that's not mine, but feels like it remembers me. I think maybe she knew something I didn't. The card's image was always the same, a woman and a lion. But she never held it by force. No ropes. No cages. Just her hand resting gently on its mane. "Real strength," my mother whispered once, "is the kind you don't have to shout about." She believed in grace. In quiet courage. The kind that walks beside grief, and still sing softly to the morning. I don't know when I forgot all of that. Maybe it slipped away during the move. Or in the divorce. Or the moment I boxed up all my paints and told myself I didn't miss them. But now that this card has shown up again, I feel something loosen inside me. A memory. Or maybe just an ache that has a shape now. My mother's deck disappeared after she died. No one could find it. We searched every drawer, every closet. It was just gone. But this card, new as it is, crisp and untouched, feels like it came from her. I know that doesn't make sense, but not everything true does. Sometimes healing doesn't knock. It slips in like sunlight through old curtain. And sometimes courage isn't a battle cry. It's the moment you stop pretending you're not hurt. The moment you reach into a drawer, pull out a memory, and decide maybe, just maybe, you're ready to feel again. I tuck the strength card into my apron pocket. It rests there like a pulse. And somewhere, between the bottles and the quiet hum of the fridge, I swear I hear her voice. You remember now, don't you? Yes. I think I do. Part 7. Sketches on Napkins. It started with a wine glass. Just the way the light caught its curve. Like a small moon waiting to be sipped. I had a pen in my apron. And a napkin in my hand. And something I don't know what moved through me. So, I drew it. A quick line. Then another. Nothing impressive. Just a gesture. A whisper of shape. I looked at it like it wasn't mine. Like maybe someone else had slipped into my body for a moment. Then I folded the napkin and tucked it into my pocket. The next night, I drew again. This time, a man's hands, old, veined, curled around a rock's glass like it was something sacred. The ink bled a little into the napkin fibers. But somehow, that made it better. Softer. It became a ritual. When the bar quieted, when the clinking faded, and the jazz brushed against silence, I'd sketch. Just little things. A pair of heels kicked off under the bar stool. The steam curling from a coffee mug. The sleepy droop of someone's eyes as they stared into nothing. I never showed anyone. Not even Harper. It felt risky. Not in a big dramatic way. But like opening a window a crack when you're not sure the storm's past. Each napkin was a breath I hadn't taken in years. Each line, a tiny rebellion. I kept them in a little box under the counter, tucked between backup straws and a roll of bar towels no one touched. I told myself it was nothing. Just doodles. Just passing the time. But I knew better. The part of me that used to paint the part that once filled canvases with color and ink, she stirred in her sleep. And with each sketch, she blinked a little more awake. I still didn't call it art. Couldn't. That word felt too big. But something inside me was reaching again. And even if it was only napkins, only ink, only shadows of moments, it was mine. And it was alive. Part 8. Rain. Always rain. Rain. It always rains here. At least, it feels that way. The kind of rain that never quite stops. Always soft, always steady. Like a constant sigh from the heavens, settling over the streets, wrapping everything in a cool embrace. I used to hate it, the endless gray. The way the sky would hang so low, like it was about to fall down on me. But now I find myself waiting for it. Counting the minutes until the first drop splatters against the window. It's funny how things change. How you go from dreading something to leaning into it. There's something about the rain that feels like a permission slip. Like it's okay to let go, to just be. I lean my elbows against the bar, feeling the coolness of the wood beneath my skin. The sound of rain against the roof is like a soft, slow rhythm. It's the only music I need tonight. A few people linger in the bar, tucked into corners with their own quiet worlds. It's the kind of night where people come in just to get away. The sort of place where no one asks too many questions, and no one expects you to be anything but yourself. And tonight, under the warm glow of the overhead lights, they're all strangers, but they're familiar. The man who always hums Sinatra while nursing his whiskey. The woman who only drinks tea, even when everyone else is sipping on something stronger. It's funny how habits like that take root. How you can tell someone's whole story just by the way they hold their cup. I smile as I pour another drink for a regular. He's talking about something that doesn't matter, and I'm only half listening. My mind is elsewhere, tracing the path of rain against the glass. It's always been this way though, hasn't it? These small moments. The ones we often overlook, thinking we'll have time to notice them later. But the rain, it's here now. And it's never late. One thing I've learned from these rainy nights is that they always leave something behind. After the storm passes, there's a clarity to the world. Everything feels sharper, more real. The air smells cleaner. The streets, wet and shining under the street lamps, seem like they've been washed free of their secrets. I think I need that kind of wash sometimes. A cleansing. I look at the small chalkboard above the bar, listing tonight's specials. A drink for the soul, the bartender calls it, It's just whiskey and honey. Simple. But it makes me feel warm in places I didn't know needed warmth. I hear a soft laugh from the corner booth. It's a quiet sound, but it carries. It's the woman who only drinks tea. She's laughing at something a friend said, but there's a certain distance in her smile. Like she's not fully there, even when she's smiling. I've noticed that about her. She's here, but not really. Just like the rest of us, I suppose. I glance over to the man humming Sinatra. His face is relaxed, his eyes closed as he taps his fingers on the counter to the rhythm of the song. He doesn't seem to care that the world outside is soaked in rain. He's found his rhythm, and I envy him for that. Maybe we're all looking for something to hold on to when the rain keeps falling. Some small piece of steady, something to remind us that everything is okay. I'm not sure if that something is the strength card in my apron pocket, or if it's the rain tapping at the window, or if it's just the way the night has wrapped itself around me, quiet and heavy with possibility. But I can feel it. Something shifting. Something stirring deep in my chest. Like the rain is pulling something out of me. Something I didn't know was there. I take a deep breath, letting the sound of the rain fill the space around me. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself just be. Let the rain wash over me. Let the night be what it is. Maybe that's all the healing I need. Just to be. To stop fighting it. To stop pretending everything's okay when it's not. To let the rain fall and know that eventually it will stop. And when it does, I'll be ready. I pour myself a drink, just a little one, and I toast to the rain, to the quiet, to the things we don't say, but feel, to the healing we don't always understand, and to the strength that rises up when we finally allow ourselves to rest. Cheers to that. And to the rain, always the rain. Part 9. A letter from her ex. I didn't expect it. I'm not sure what I thought I'd be expecting when I opened the mailbox, but it wasn't that. A letter. An honest-to-God letter. A real one. With his handwriting curved and loopy, like it's still trying to hold on to the pieces of us that used to fit. It's been how long? Too long, I think. Years. And yet, his name on the envelope still stirs something in me. Something that isn't quite anger or sadness, but just a stirring. A soft flutter in the chest. It's like he's still here, even though he's not. Even though the house we once shared has long since become a stranger to both of us. I sit at the kitchen table, the letter unopened in front of me. The smell of rain still clings to the air, a little sharp and sweet. I run my finger over the edge of the envelope, tracing his name. I can almost hear his voice saying it my name, the way it used to sound when it was wrapped in warmth and love. But that warmth, it feels distant now. Like a memory I don't fully trust anymore. I want to open it. I think I do. But I'm also afraid. Afraid of what I'll feel. Afraid that maybe this letter, this simple piece of paper, will somehow break everything I've built up since we parted. That it will unravel the careful stitches I've made to keep the pieces of me together. I take a breath. And then, like it's nothing like I've done this 1,000 times before I tear the envelope open. The paper is crisp and the ink is fresh. I read the first few lines, polite, formal. Nothing that I wasn't expecting. He's remarried. He's getting married again. The words are simple, but they hit me like a brick. Not because I care that he's moving on. Not because I feel jealousy creeping in from some hidden corner of my heart. Number. It's the finality of it. The way it feels like I've been shut out of a chapter I thought was still unfinished. I thought for a moment that maybe we were both still working through it. But no. He's moving forward. Leaving me behind like I've always been just a page in his book. I stare at the words for a while, trying to make sense of them. I don't know why, but there's a sort of calm in the stillness of the moment. Maybe it's the rain again, soothing everything into place. Maybe it's the fact that somehow this letter, this last little thread, is cutting through the fog that settled in my chest. I never realized how much I'd been holding on to. To him. To us. But what's left of us, really? I wonder, as I fold the letter back up and slide it across the table. He's already gone. And I am too. I've been long gone, even if I didn't know it. I thought maybe there'd be a sudden rush of feeling. Maybe I'd cry, or laugh, or get angry. But I don't. I just sit there, listening to the rain, feeling the weight of the letter on the table, and really realizing that this is the last piece of him I'll ever have. The last piece that doesn't belong to me anymore. There's no jealousy. There's no bitterness. Just finality. And somewhere beneath it, a deep sigh of relief. I pour myself a drink, my hand a little shaky. I take a sip, the warmth of the whiskey settling in my chest. It's the kind of warmth that reminds me of nights spent wrapped in blankets, pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. But now, it feels different. More like something new. Something that hasn't yet taken shape, but is already here. I don't know what comes next, but I know that it doesn't matter anymore. The letter is his, but the future, that's mine. And I think I'm ready to start living in it. Part 10. The Tarot Regular. It's strange, the way people come into your life. How they just sort of appear. Like they were always meant to be there, but you never noticed until the right moment. That's how he felt when he first came into the bar. Not with a bang, but with a quiet, easy presence that slipped past my usual noise. I don't even know how it started. He came in one evening, ordered his usual gin, neat. But he didn't sit at his usual spot right away. He stood there for a moment, scanning the room with those kind eyes of his. Brown eyes, soft and still, like they've seen 100 stories and don't need to tell a single one. I don't think I noticed it then, but now I can't stop remembering. He didn't talk much at first. Just nodded to me when I brought his drink over, then sat down by the window. Always by the window. He'd pull out a small notebook and start writing, glancing up every now and then to catch the rhythm of the room. I don't know why, but I started paying attention to him. Maybe it was the way he was always so calm. Like nothing could ever disturb him. Even the noise of the bar, the clinking glasses, the murmurs of conversation, it never seemed to reach him. One night, he said something about the rain. I don't know why that's what sticks with me, but it does. He looked out at the window, fingers tapping lightly on the edge of his glass, and said, "Rain makes everything feel a little quieter, don't you think?" I remember nodding, surprised by how true that felt. Sometimes the simplest things are the ones that hit the hardest. I didn't say anything else. He didn't seem to need a reply. It was just a truth hanging there between us, unspoken. The drawing started shortly after that. Not from me, no, but from him. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but one night, when I came to refill his drink, I saw it. A sketch on the napkin in front of him, delicate, quiet. It wasn't much just the curve of a hand, the soft angle of fingers brushing a wine glass. Simple, but somehow important. Like it held a quiet meaning that only he could understand. I didn't say anything about it. But the next time he came in, it was the same thing. Another sketch. Another quiet little detail from the world around us. A half-empty glass. A bar stool. And always, always the soft flow of movement. Never anything too bold. Just life. His eyes flickered to mine for just a moment before he tucked the napkin into his jacket pocket and turned back to his writing. No words, just a quiet understanding between us. I couldn't help but wonder what he was really seeing. Then One evening, after a particularly slow night, he left a tarot card on the bar as he paid his tab. A small gesture, but it made my pulse skip. I didn't touch it right away, unsure if it was meant for me. But I couldn't help it. The card was face up, a clear invitation to take it in. The Lovers. Upright. No hidden meaning, just healing. It felt like a gift. Like he was offering me a glimpse into something I hadn't quite seen yet. The next week, the same thing happened. Another card. The Star. Upright again. I started to wonder if he was trying to tell me something, or if he just liked the idea of leaving these little tokens behind. But he never spoke of it. Never mentioned the cards. Just the same quiet nod and the same soft smile. And each time, I felt a little more seen. A little more understood. Even without words, there was no pattern, not that I could decipher. No rhyme or reason to the cards he left. Some nights, it was the Wheel of Fortune. Others, the High Priestess. Each one was different, yet somehow the same. Each one was upright. Each one spoke of healing, of hope, of something new just around the corner. I never asked him why. He didn't need to explain. In a way, it was enough just to know that he understood. That these cards, these tiny gifts, were more than just symbols. They were a connection. A way of saying, you're not alone. And maybe in that small way, I wasn't. Not anymore. Part 11. When the power went out. The storm came out of nowhere, like it always does. 1 minute, the sky was clear, and the next, it was thick with clouds, rolling in like the weight of 100 unsaid things. It wasn't the kind of storm that gives you a warning. Just a flash of lightning, a low rumble of thunder, and then the power went out. The whole bar went dark in an instant. For a moment, it felt like the world had forgotten us. I heard a few gasps, a shuffle of feet, and the soft clink of glass. But no one panicked. We'd been through this before. The hum of the fridge stopped, and the neon sign outside flickered before going completely dark. For the briefest second, everything was still. Then, the noise of the storm outside crept in the sound of rain against the windows, the wind whipping through the trees. The bar had become a little quieter, a little smaller. I fumbled in the dark for the matches we kept under the counter, and soon a few candles were lit. Their flickering light cast strange, soft shadows on the walls. The room looked different, quieter, as though we had stepped into some forgotten memory. The kind of memory that comes with a slight ache, but it's comfortable. Familiar. Like it's been there all along, just waiting for us to remember it. People murmured, but no one complained. They didn't mind the dark. Sometimes, the dark is where the good stories are, where the things we're afraid to say can finally come out. I don't know why it was that night, but suddenly, the bar felt more like a living room. More like a place where people could just be. The chatter slowed, the clinking of glasses softened, and for the first time in a long time, I could hear the stories in the room. The regulars, usually wrapped in their own worlds, were talking to each other now. Laughing, sharing memories. Some of them were people I'd known for years, but in that flickering candlelight, they seemed new. Like the storm had stripped them down to something real. I listened to the sound of their voices, the way they spoke more freely, more openly, as if the darkness had given them permission. And then, there was him. The tarot regular, the one who always left the cards behind. He was sitting in his usual spot by the window, looking out at the rain as if he were somewhere else. I knew he didn't mind the power going out. He was one of those people who seemed to carry his own light. But tonight, he wasn't writing. He wasn't drawing. He was just sitting there, listening to the storm. I found myself moving toward him, drawn by something I couldn't name. I had a feeling that tonight would be different. So, I sat down across from him, letting the quiet of the storm fill the space between us. For a while, we said nothing. Just watched the rain dance against the windows. It wasn't uncomfortable. It felt safe. In that moment, I didn't need to fill the silence with anything. I think we both knew that. And then, without warning, he spoke. His voice was low, like it was meant just for the space between us. You know, I once heard someone say, he began, his eyes flickering toward me, that the storm doesn't end when the sky clears. It ends when you can finally breathe again. I felt something shift inside me, a quiet stirring, like a memory that wasn't mine. There was something about his words that resonated with me. Something familiar. I didn't say anything right away. I think I was waiting for him to say more, but he didn't. Instead, he just sat there, staring into the candlelight as if he were lost in his own thoughts. I sat there with him, the world outside forgotten. And then, without any warning, I found myself telling him my story. I don't know why it came out then. Maybe it was the storm, or the dark, or the fact that we were the only ones left in the room. But I told him everything. About the divorce, the years I spent running from my past, the pain I didn't know how to carry. I told him about the empty spaces I tried to fill with all the wrong things. And about how sometimes I still didn't know how to be okay. When I finished, there was silence. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was more like a pause, The kind you take when you're finally exhaling after holding your breath for too long. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with those quiet eyes. And for the first time, I felt seen. Like all the parts of me that I had hidden for so long were finally laid out in front of someone, and they weren't too much. They were just me. I think we're all broken in some way, he said, his voice so soft it barely cut through the noise of the storm. But sometimes that's how we grow. I nodded, the words settling in like they belonged there. It was true. We were all broken in our own ways. Maybe it was the power going out that made us realize it. Or maybe it was just the storm. But for that moment, I didn't feel so alone. I didn't feel like the only one who had pieces of themselves that didn't fit quite right. The storm raged on outside, but inside the bar, the darkness felt warm. It wasn't scary. It was just safe. Like maybe, for the first time in a long time, we were all exactly where we needed to be. Part 12. A painting in the alley. I wasn't sure why I picked up the paintbrush again, but there it was, the feeling. Like a tiny spark in the back of my mind, calling me. It wasn't the kind of thing I had planned. I hadn't been thinking about painting at all. Not since. Well, not since that one time, years ago, when it all felt like too much. But that day, with the rain pouring outside and the bar quieter than usual, the urge came. I could feel it in my fingers, the itch of creativity. The pull of the brush against something that could hold the weight of it all. I took the canvas from the dusty corner in the back of the bar where I'd hidden it for so long. It was simple. Just a blank stretch of fabric. But in that moment, it felt like the most precious thing I had. I set it down on the rickety old easel, the kind of thing that wobbled if you breathed on it too hard. The paint was old, the colors muted, but there was something about the way it all came together, the smell of the paint, the texture of the canvas, the sound of the brush strokes. It was like slipping back into a dream you never wanted to wake up from. At first, I didn't know what I was doing. The brush hovered above the canvas, and I let it dance in the air, tracing shapes, forming lines that meant nothing. But then, slowly, they began to make sense. The strokes took on a life of their own, pulling me deeper into something that felt both familiar and brand new. There was no plan, no grand idea, just the need to create, to let the colors speak when my words couldn't. I don't know how long I painted. Time felt different when I was lost in it, when I was consumed by the colors. But eventually, it was done. The painting was simple, really. A splash of blues, purples, and soft greens, mixed with streaks of gold, weaving together like the storm outside, raw, wild, but somehow beautiful. The kind of painting that made you feel like you were looking at a part of yourself you didn't quite understand but somehow recognized. I took a step back and stared at it for a moment, wondering if it meant something I hadn't yet figured out. But the thought was fleeting. The painting didn't need to mean anything. It just needed to exist. So I hung it in the alley behind the bar, where the light from the dim street lamps caught the edges, making it glow in the dark. There was something beautiful about it there, out in the open, but hidden at the same time, like a secret that only a few would notice. The next morning, I almost forgot about it. I went about my usual routine, checking the shelves, wiping down the counter, making sure everything was in place. But then, when I walked out to the alley to take a quick look at the day's weather, something caught my eye. It was a piece of paper, crumpled slightly, lying at the base of the painting. I bent down and picked it up, unfolding it carefully, as if it were something fragile. The note was simple, scrawled in a hurried yet delicate hand. "More, please." That was it. Just those 3 words. But they hit me in a way I didn't expect. I stood there in the alley, holding the note, feeling a strange kind of warmth spread through me despite the cool morning air. It was such a small thing, a simple request, a gesture from a stranger. But it felt like something big, something important. It made me feel seen. Like the thing I had created, the thing I thought was only for me, had resonated with someone else. I wondered who had left it. Was it one of the regulars? Someone who had passed by and felt moved, even if just for a moment? Or was it someone entirely different? Someone who didn't come to the bar but had seen the painting from the alley? It didn't matter. It was the feeling that stayed with me, the feeling of connection, of being part of something bigger than myself, even if just for that fleeting second. The note became something I carried with me in my pocket for a while, crumpled and soft from being held too many times. It reminded me that sometimes it's the smallest things, the briefest interactions, the quietest requests that make the biggest impact. It made me want to paint again, to create more, even if I didn't always know what it meant. Maybe it was enough to just keep creating, keep sharing. Maybe that was the thing I had been missing all along. So, I painted again. And each time I did, I thought of that note. The simple words that had quietly urged me to keep going. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Part 13. Strength again. I woke up with a kind of heaviness that doesn't come from sleep, but from something else, something unspoken, hidden just beneath the surface. The kind of heaviness that settles into your bones after too many quiet nights and too many solitary mornings. I rolled over, stretching lazily as the light filtered through the dusty curtains of my room. The bar was quiet this morning too. But that's how it always is when the night stories fade into the early light. And for once, the quiet felt like a relief. Like I could breathe in the space between the noise and the chatter of the world. I had been drawing again, the sketches from the night before scattered across the table. But there was something about them today that felt different. I reached over, my fingers grazing the edges of the drawings, and there it was, another tarot card. This time, it wasn't tucked into a drawing like the others, almost hidden away. It was just there, plain as day, lying face up on the table. And I knew immediately what it was. It was the Strength card again. But this one was different from the others. The image wasn't quite the same. It wasn't the woman with the lion or the gentle strength of her presence. This one was fiercer, wilder. The lion looked more like it was in motion, its mane wild, as if caught in the storm of something bigger than itself. The woman on the card wasn't simply holding the lion's mouth closed anymore. She was standing beside it, strong, unyielding. It was a different kind of strength. One that felt raw and untamed, yet still under control. Like a fire that couldn't be tamed, but was burning in a way that didn't destroy everything in its path. I stared at the card for a long time, turning it over in my fingers. It almost felt like it was waiting for me to understand something. I wasn't sure what that something was, but it was there, lingering in the edges of the card, in the swirls of red and gold. This time, I couldn't help but wonder, was this just a coincidence? How many times had I pulled that card before, and how many different ways had it showed up in my life? Was it a sign? Was someone trying to tell me something? Or was it just me, forcing meaning into everything I touched, trying to make sense of a world that didn't always make sense to me? Could I really trust that this card again, meant something more than the others? I thought back to all the times the tarot cards had shown up. It hadn't been just once, had it? The first time, I'd been so sure it was a coincidence. But then, there were more. More cards that seemed to speak to me in a way that I couldn't quite explain. And it was always the same. The cards that came were about healing, about strength, about finding a way to pick yourself up when everything else around you was falling apart. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I began to wonder if someone was trying to help me. Maybe it wasn't a coincidence at all. Maybe someone or something was trying to guide me, to show me the way back to myself. I wanted to believe that. It felt good in a way to think that there was someone out there who cared enough to send me these little messages, to nudge me back onto the path when I strayed too far. But then, there was another thought. What if I was the one helping myself? What if this wasn't some cosmic hand reaching out to me? What if it was just me, slowly finding my own way again? picking up the pieces of my heart and mind one card at a time. Maybe I was the one healing myself. Maybe the strength I needed was already inside of me. Maybe I had always had it, just waiting to be discovered, like a treasure buried deep inside. And maybe, just maybe, the cards were there to help me see that. Maybe it wasn't about some external force at all. Maybe it was just about trusting myself. I picked up the card again, studying the image of the woman and the lion. This time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a reminder. A reminder that strength isn't always loud or fierce. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's gentle. And sometimes it's just about standing your ground, even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. I tucked the card back into my pocket, letting it settle there, close to my heart. I didn't need to know everything right now. I didn't need all the answers. But I knew one thing: I was going to keep going. And that, I think, was the strength I needed all along. Part 14. The Voice That Returned. The night was calm when he walked back in. The door swung open slowly, the bell above it chiming softly. And there he was, the man with quiet eyes. There was something about him that made the air feel heavier when he entered, like he carried a weight that no one else could see, but everyone could feel. And maybe that was why he always seemed to find the seat in the darkest corner, where the shadows stretched long and the world outside didn't seem to matter so much. He didn't speak immediately, just settled into his usual spot at the bar, the same half-smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I noticed the way he glanced around, as though he was searching for something or perhaps someone. It wasn't a gaze of expectation, not exactly. But it was there. I couldn't help but wonder if he had been waiting for this moment, for the exact moment when the right words would come. The moment when, maybe, something inside of me would finally soften enough to listen. I didn't approach him right away. I was in one of those moods, the kind where you feel like you're slipping away into your thoughts and can't quite find the way back to the surface. But he didn't need me to make the first move. He didn't need to push or rush or make me feel any different from how I already did. He just waited. It was as though he understood something I couldn't quite grasp myself. And I wondered if he always had that understanding, that quiet patience. If he was the kind of man who would sit in silence for hours, letting the world unfold around him, all while holding his own unspoken truths. It wasn't until later, when the bar had quieted down and the evening was slipping into the darker hours, that he finally spoke. His voice was low, and I could hear the weight of something in it. He wasn't talking to me directly at first. Not exactly. But it felt like he was talking to me anyway, like he was speaking to a part of me that I didn't even know was there. He leaned slightly toward me, his hands wrapped around a glass of something amber. And then, in that soft, measured way he always spoke, he said, "I'm a therapist, you know." I don't often talk about it, but it's true. His words hung in the air between us, like a confession that wasn't entirely his to make. I nodded, unsure of what to say. I had heard him mention things before, glimpses of his life, fragments of stories that felt distant and unspoken. But this was different. This time, it wasn't just an observation or a passing remark. This was him, opening a door I hadn't expected him to open. He wasn't the man with quiet eyes anymore. He was something more, something real, and vulnerable, and full of a grief I hadn't realized he carried. He didn't wait for me to speak, didn't ask me anything. Instead, he just kept talking. And his voice, though quiet, carried a certain weight. "Grief," he said, almost like it was a word he had been learning to say for years. "It's not something you get over." I could hear the way the word softened as it left his lips. It was like he was unraveling something within himself, and with each word, I felt him share more of the story I hadn't even known he was holding. "I lost someone once," he continued, his eyes focusing on the glass in front of him, "and I thought I could handle it. I thought I could just move on, you know. But grief doesn't work that way. It doesn't let you move on. It makes you stay. Stay with the memories, stay with the pain, stay with the things you never said." I watched him as he spoke, unsure if he was telling me his story, or if it was somehow meant for me. The bartender, the woman who listened to everyone else's tales, now found herself listening. And for the first time, I didn't retreat. I didn't pull away from him. Maybe it was because there was something familiar in the way he spoke, something that echoed the quiet ache I had never fully allowed myself to feel. Or maybe it was because, in that moment, it felt safe to listen. "I learned," he said, almost as if to himself, "that you can't rush grief. It doesn't let you go until it's ready. But when it finally does, you'll find that it's not so much about getting over it. It's about making space for it." The room was silent, save for the clink of glass and the distant hum of rain on the windows. His words lingered there with me as I tried to wrap my mind around them. I felt something shift, just a little, a kind of understanding that hadn't been there before. I didn't know exactly how to explain it, but I felt it in the depth of his voice, in the way he shared a grief that wasn't just his. It was a grief we all carry, in some way. A grief that doesn't go away, but becomes part of who we are. And maybe, for the first time, I realized that it was okay to not have all the answers. It was okay to carry the sadness, the loss, the things that we couldn't change. I didn't need to fix it all. Sometimes, just listening, just letting someone else's voice fill the space was enough. It was enough to remind me that I wasn't alone in this. For the first time, I listened. And somehow, that felt like the first step toward healing. Part 15. Her mother's voice. It came to me in the way dreams do, blurry and tangled, as if the world I was in wasn't quite real, yet everything felt too familiar to be anything other than true. In this dream, I was standing in a place I couldn't place, but I knew it. The scent of jasmine was heavy in the air, wrapping around me like a soft, comforting blanket. The kind of smell that reminded me of my mother's garden, where I'd spent countless hours as a child, playing with the flowers and pretending they could talk back to me. I could almost hear her humming in the distance, that soft, steady tune that always seemed to fill every corner of the house. And then I heard it, her voice. Clear and tender, as though she were standing right beside me, her words slipping through the air like a whispered secret. You are enough. The words weren't a question. They were a certainty, a truth that had always been there, whether I had realized it or not. You always were. I froze. There was something about those words that stirred something deep inside of me. A part of me that had forgotten, or maybe chosen to forget, how often she had said those words to me. How often she had reassured me when I was unsure, when I felt small in a world that seemed far too large. When I thought I wasn't enough. Her voice, the sound of home, washed over me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the weight of her love pressing gently against my chest. But then, just as suddenly as it had come, the dream began to fade, like smoke slipping through my fingers. The smell of jasmine lingered, but her voice began to fade into the quiet hum of the world around me. I reached out, trying to hold on to it, to keep her words close, but it was no use. The dream had slipped away. I woke up with a start, the warmth of the blanket still around me, but the sense of her presence gone. The room was dim, the early morning light filtering through the curtains. I lay there, still trying to grasp the remnants of the dream, but it was already slipping away. All I had left were the words. You are enough. You always were. I let out a shaky breath, the realization that I had been crying before I woke up hitting me all at once. My cheeks were damp, the tears still fresh on my skin. But for the first time in ages, I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel like the weight of the world had fallen on my shoulders. I felt okay. Not perfect. Not healed. Not yet. But for the first time in so long, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel like I was missing something that couldn't be found. I didn't feel like I was running out of time. There was a kind of peace in it. A stillness that I didn't know I could find in myself. And as I lay there, letting the reality of the moment settle into me, I felt my mother's presence again. Not in the way I had in the dream, but in the gentle reminder of the truth she had always told me. The truth I had always known, deep down, that I was enough. The tears came in waves, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from something softer, something gentler. A kind of release. Like the dam that had held back so much had finally cracked, and the flood of emotions that had been building inside of me for so long could finally flow freely. I wasn't weak. I was human. And I was enough. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle over me like a warm embrace. I wasn't sure how to explain it, or even if it made sense. But in that moment, lying there in the quiet of my room, I knew something had shifted. A part of me that had been lost for so long had found its way home, even if just for a moment. The sun was starting to rise outside, casting a soft glow over the room. I took another breath, deeper this time, and let the stillness of the morning wash over me. Maybe I didn't have all the answers. Maybe I wasn't where I thought I would be, or where I wanted to be. But for now, I was enough. And that was a start. Part 16. The tarot deck is complete. It was one of those nights, the kind where the world feels softer somehow, like the air has been steeped in something warm and comforting, like honey or chamomile tea. The bar was quieter than usual, the usual chatter and clinking of glasses muffled by the soft, persistent patter of rain against the windows. I had settled into my usual spot near the window, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass, lost in the rhythm of the world outside. Everything felt still, in that way that makes you wonder if time is just waiting with you, holding its breath. I didn't expect him to show up that night. Not that I ever really expected it. But somehow, when I saw him walk through the door, there was a kind of knowing, a sense that something was about to shift, even though I couldn't say why. His quiet eyes met mine across the room, and I gave him a small nod, acknowledging the unspoken connection we had developed over the weeks. He had been coming to the bar more often now, and each time he left me something. A tarot card, a single, perfect card. Everyone upright, everyone reminding me of something I didn't always remember, the strength in me, the wisdom I had forgotten, the possibility I still carried. Tonight, though, he had something different. Something more. I watched him as he walked toward me, his gaze steady, his movements deliberate, like he was carrying something precious and fragile. He stopped beside my table, and for the first time, he didn't sit down immediately. Instead, he held out his hands to me, the tarot deck now complete, a full set, not just the individual cards he had left me before. "I thought you might like to have it," he said, his voice low and measured, like he was giving me something sacred, something meaningful. He set the deck in front of me, and my fingers hesitated for a moment before I took it, gently running my hands over the edges of the cards. Each one was beautiful in its own way, every image uniquely crafted to speak to something deep inside me. But as I looked closer, I noticed something I hadn't before. Each card had something written on the back. I turned one over, my breath catching in my throat. On the back of the strength card, there was a note. You've always had it in you. You just needed to remember. I smiled softly, running my finger over the words as if they were something delicate, like a secret only I was meant to know. It wasn't just a card anymore. It was a part of me. I flipped through the deck slowly, card by card, and each one held a small message for me. A word of encouragement here, a note of understanding there. On the Wheel of Fortune it said, "The cycles are always moving. You are part of that flow." On the star, look up, look inward. Hope is never far away. I felt the words sink into me, each one building on the last, creating a map of sorts. A map that showed me the path I had been walking all along, even when I hadn't known it. And then, at the very end of the deck, the last card, the World. I flipped it over, and this time, there was no message. Just a tiny handwritten note in the corner. "This one's for you to write." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, the cards resting in my lap, their presence filling up the space around me. He had seen something in me. Something he thought was worth nurturing, worth acknowledging. And now, in a way I couldn't quite explain, I was seeing it in myself too. "You gave me more than just cards," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "You gave me a way to see myself." I met his eyes then, and for the first time, I saw something different in them, a quiet kind of pride maybe, or perhaps understanding. It wasn't the look of someone trying to fix me. It was the look of someone who had quietly watched me heal, who had quietly helped me find my way back to myself. "I'm glad," he said simply, his voice steady, but there was something in the way he said it that made me feel like the weight of everything he had been carrying too had been lifted. Like he had given me something that mattered. And now, I was holding it in my hands. I looked down at the deck again, each card now more than just an image or a message. They were pieces of a story I hadn't realized I was writing until now. My story. And it wasn't finished yet. I had the rest of the deck to finish it. I had the strength, the courage, and the hope to write it the way I wanted it to be written. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with gratitude. And in that moment, I meant it more than I had ever meant anything before. He smiled softly, his quiet eyes reflecting something that felt like peace. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. Part 17. The tray again. It was months later when I found it again. The tray. The same one I had left on the bar all those weeks ago, abandoned like an old memory. The wooden edges had worn down with time, its surface smooth from being handled, its corners just a little more rounded. I hadn't even realized it had been there until I walked past the shelf where it was tucked away. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at it, feeling something shift in the quiet space of my mind. Something that made me pause, take a breath, and let the moment linger. It was strange, really, how much time had passed. How much I had changed since then. Since that first card, that first tarot reading, that first glance at the possibility of a future I could actually live with. I thought about the man with the quiet eyes, the therapist who had given me so much, and the way the cards had slowly but surely woven themselves into the tapestry of my life. I thought about the strength card, the first one I had received, and how its message had taken root in me. How it had started as a whisper and now lived in my chest, pulsing gently like the quiet hum of a heart that knew exactly what it needed. I ran my fingers over the tray surface, remembering how I had placed it down that first night with a kind of uncertainty, unsure if I was ready to begin this new chapter, unsure if I had the strength to do it. But somehow, I had begun. And here I was, standing before it again, stronger, softer, more whole than I had ever imagined I could be. The tray wasn't the same anymore, not in the way I thought it would be. There was no card this time, no note, no small token of encouragement. But I didn't need one. Not anymore. The cards had already done their work. The messages had been absorbed, taken in, and woven into the fabric of my being. I was living the strength card now, breathing it in with every step, every breath. I didn't need a reminder to be strong anymore. I had become the reminder. I lifted the tray from its place on the shelf, feeling its weight in my hands. It felt different now, more like a piece of my own story than an object that had been left behind. It was as if I had come full circle, like I had returned to where it all began. Only now, I could see everything more clearly. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into this bar all those months ago. The one who had been lost, unsure, fragile. I was different. I was whole, in a way I hadn't even known was possible. I set the tray down on the bar, smoothing out the napkin underneath, and took a moment to breathe. It felt good, this quiet peace that had settled inside me. I looked around the bar, watching the patrons in their own little worlds, some laughing, some deep in thought, and I realized something. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was enough. I had already figured it out. I had been enough all along. I had been gentle with myself, like the strength card had taught me to be. I had let myself feel everything without retreating, without numbing myself to the pain, the grief, the joy. I had allowed myself to be fully awake, fully alive, fully present in each moment. And in doing that, I had found my power. Not the kind of power that comes from force or from trying to control things. No, this power was different. It was the kind that comes from surrender, from trusting that everything would unfold as it was meant to. And if it didn't, well, that was okay too. I was learning to live without fear. To trust that I was strong enough, even when things felt uncertain, even when the path ahead was unclear. I was learning to be gentle with myself, to stop trying to be something I wasn't, to stop pushing myself into molds that didn't fit. I was learning to let go of the need for perfection, for validation. To simply be. I looked down at the tray again, its smooth surface reflecting the dim light of the bar. I didn't need a card to tell me who I was anymore. I knew. I had found my own strength, my own quiet power, and now I was living it. I was living the story I had once thought I could never write. And that, in itself, was enough. I took a deep breath, my fingers lingering on the edge of the tray, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely, undeniably whole. Part 18. The Woman Who Stayed. The rain was tapping softly against the window, its rhythm steady and comforting, like the gentle hum of the earth's breath. I sat at the bar, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea, not whiskey tonight, not wine. Tea. Something warm and soothing, something gentle. I watched the droplets race each other down the glass, their paths twisting and turning like the thoughts in my mind, winding through memories, dreams, and pieces of my story. The bar was quieter now, the usual hum of conversation replaced by the soft clink of glasses being cleaned, and the soft shuffle of footsteps as someone else worked behind the counter. Someone else, not me. It felt strange at first, to not be the one holding the reins. To not be the one who poured the drinks or wiped down the counter. To not be the one who welcomed the regulars and made sure the place was in order. But tonight, I was just another guest, sitting on the other side of the bar. And it felt peaceful. Peaceful in a way I didn't know I needed until I found it. I wasn't in charge anymore. I didn't need to be. The world was turning just fine without me holding it together, and I was finally okay with that. It was a strange kind of freedom, a quiet kind of strength, a power that wasn't rooted in control or in doing everything myself, but in letting go and trusting that things would unfold the way they needed to. I sipped my tea, watching the rain. It was always the rain that brought me back, always the sound of it that washed away the remnants of old hurts, old fears. I had always been drawn to storms, to the way the world seemed to pause and hold its breath just before the rain came, like nature itself was gathering strength, preparing for something new. I had always thought of myself as something like that, a storm, waiting to break, waiting for the moment when I would finally be strong enough to weather the world on my own terms. And now here I was, sitting in the quiet aftermath, not as a force of nature, but as something else entirely. Something softer, something more, alive. It had taken time to get here. To sit here, in this peaceful corner of the bar, without the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. It had taken all of the moments before this, the cards, the tears, the small conversations, the quiet realizations to arrive at this place. This moment of stillness, I could feel the weight of the past lifting from my chest, little by little, as I sat there, my hands cradling the warm cup, the world outside falling away with each passing drop of rain. I had learned so much along the way, things I never expected to learn, things I hadn't known I needed to know. And now, I wasn't just a woman who had survived. I was a woman who had come back to life. I leaned back in my chair, letting the soft hum of the bar settle around me. The rain outside was louder now, its steady rhythm a lullaby, a reminder that everything always comes full circle. And here I was, at the end of one chapter, looking forward to the next. It wasn't always easy to get here, but it had been worth it. Every single bit of it. A few patrons filtered in, some familiar faces, some new. The air was thick with that sense of shared space, shared stories, and the gentle buzz of life moving on. I glanced at the clock. It was nearly time for me to leave, for the night to close and the world to begin again. But for now, I was content to sit here and let the rain wash over me. To be present in this moment, right where I was, without needing to be anywhere else, without needing anything else. I smiled softly, to myself more than anyone else, and then I spoke. My voice, still a little unsteady, but with a warmth that I hadn't realized I had found. This is how I came back to life, I said, my words soft in the quiet of the bar. I came back piece by piece, by letting go of all the things that weren't me. I came back by learning how to breathe again, and by trusting that I could, in fact, be enough. That I was always enough. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. That is my story. Good night, my dear friend.